Greetings. A foreclosure wave is coming. Well, that's been the persistent claim for a few years, and I disagree. Yes, the market across the country got overheated, but that doesn't mean foreclosures are going to spike. I'm Craig Smyser with 1835 Realty. Let me lay out 5 reasons that I think the foreclosure wave is nothing but a ripple. First, let's look at unemployment. It's a top indicator of foreclosures for an obvious reason. If you're unemployed, you can only pay your mortgage for a finite period of time before you start missing payments, and if prolonged, headed to foreclosure. But if we look at unemployment today, that in no way indicates a lot of foreclosures on the horizon. We're at 3.5%, which is historically low. On this chart is the 75-year average of 5.7%, and the average during the financial crisis from 2008 to 2012, and that was 8.3%. So at this point, unemployment's not a widespread problem that will lead to a massive increase in foreclosures. Another claim is that the amount of mortgage debt in the U.S. has never been higher. And I agree with that, but there's an obvious explanation. The value of homes has increased a lot over the past few years to prices most markets haven't seen. As a result, people needed to borrow more on their mortgages. And until recently, this borrowing was done at super low interest rates, making payments very affordable. So let's look at this through a different lens, comparing mortgage payments to disposable income. According to the St. Louis Fed, that ratio is currently 3.9%, one of the lowest in over 40 years. It peaked at 7.2% shortly before the financial crisis. So while the total mortgage balance is higher, the ability to make those payments is excellent. Now, a third claim is that there are still many people in forbearance from the pandemic. While this was the case back in 2020, it's barely a blip today. As a reminder, forbearance was a way to delay mortgage payments when people were not getting paid in 2020. As it turned out, many of the people who were granted forbearance never even missed a single payment. But of those who did need it, the vast majority of those people got out of forbearance without losing their home, which of course was the entire point. So at one point, about 8.5% of all U.S. mortgages were in a forbearance plan. Today, that number is less than 0.5%. So even if every one of them went to foreclosure, it wouldn't be a wave. Next, let's look at loans that are behind on their payments. Clearly, if there are a lot of people behind on payments now, then foreclosures will be coming. Here's a chart showing the percentage of loans that are in serious delinquency, which is defined as 3 months or more behind in payments. One line is Fannie Mae, the other is Freddie Mac, and you can see that they follow the same pattern. In January of 21, just over 1% of all mortgages were seriously delinquent. Right now, it's about half that, coming in around 0.55%. For context, during the financial crisis, this number ranged from around 3.5% to almost 5%. So even if I'm wrong and a wave is coming, I can tell you that based on this leading indicator, it's not coming soon. Another aspect to examine is negative equity. This is when the house is worth less than what is owed. It's important because if a borrower gets behind on payments, they have equity in their house. So they can sell it, they can get access to that equity, and they can avoid foreclosure. If you have no equity, there's less incentive to sell and the foreclosure becomes more likely. At the height of the financial crisis, over 16 million U.S. homes were in a negative equity situation. Right now, that number stands at less than 350,000. Almost every homeowner in the country has equity in their home. So to recap, of those 5 leading indicators, none of them points to a wave of foreclosures coming anytime soon. So while I've been hearing chatter for at least 2 years, the number of foreclosures today is very low. But what about the recent headlines screaming that foreclosures are up almost 200%? Well, let's take a look. This chart shows the actual number of foreclosures in the first 6 months of each year. During the Great Recession, it was over 1 million every year, actually peaking at 1.7 million in 2010. And this year, well, it's 186,000. Yes, it's the highest it's been in 3 years, but keep in mind that partway through 2020 and well into 2021, many states didn't permit foreclosures, so those years were artificially low. To say this year is almost 200% higher than 2021, well, it's technically correct. But it's also disingenuous and designed simply to alarm the public. As I said earlier, the foreclosure wave, well, it's just a ripple. I expect it to stay that way for quite a while. Now, could a big, unexpected economic shock come along that changes this outlook? Of course. But nothing known today is predicting a lot of foreclosures heading our way. I'm Craig Smyser with 1835 Realty.